Well, welcome to One Company, One Story, a sub-channel I have on YouTube. This week's going to be about Geron, a company I've known for quite a while. But first, there's all the disclosures and disclaimers and all that sort of amateur legalese. So, this is a YouTube channel by Tom Trimbath about a company behind a stock, because the stocks represent companies, and companies are run by people. It's easy to concentrate on stock price, but I think the real story is what those employees and managers are doing. Here comes the amateur legalese. I began investing in companies and their stocks in the late 70s, but I'm not a certified investment professional. My style and history of investing is described in Dream, Invest, Live, a book I wrote by request, which came out as the Great Recession, also known as the Second Great Depression, began. Bad timing, eh? My personal finance blog is trimbathcreative.net. I am not an investment professional. This is not financial advice. This is merely my opinion and impression of one company, Geron, and its stock. So Geron is a fascinating company. I've been part of it as a stockholder since about 1999. And at this point, what they're talking about proceeding with is biotech that is sophisticated enough that a lot of folks can easily be overwhelmed with the nomenclature that they have. But the company is now working on telomerase treatments for, as they put it here, well, basically for oncology, for cancers, and I think their main thing right now is hematological malignancies, which is blood disorders, that sort of thing. I'm going to take a note for my own blog, because every 6 months I do a thing called a semi-annual portfolio exercise where I describe each of my stocks for my own benefit, but put it out there for other folks to read as well. But here we go. This is what I just said at the end of the first half of 2022. Geron is a leading-edge biotech firm that has been hanging on that edge for as long as I've owned the stock, since 1999. Their primary focus has been reduced to telomerase and blood disorder treatments, a la Imetelstat, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, after having sold off other divisions to raise funds to continue the work. Though long delayed and anticipated, they have finally reached phase 3 for at least one of the treatments. Let's see if They expect results in early 2023, which is not all that far away, after which they plan to submit the drug's application to the FDA, as I understand it. Commercialization could happen as early as 2024. That schedule is aided by fast track and orphan drug statuses. Some things that help to accelerate drug approvals, I hope. This journey has taken so long that it's hard to believe it is near. Is the leading edge blunted? That heritage may also explain why there doesn't seem to be a surge of interest, until today's stock, that is. There is some renewed interest, but not what I expect from a biotech about to enter commercialization. Who knows more, the current shareholders or the reluctant ones? Now, to counterpoint that, I'm also going to read from what I wrote in 2007. I've been doing these semi-annual portfolio reviews for over a decade, and this will give some more background to really where the stock has been and is going. This is from 2007, and sorry I don't have that to put on the screen. Tell you what, I'll let you look at the telomeres. Geron is one of my most speculative stocks. Again, this is 2007. And Geron is one of my most speculative companies. This is after I've owned it for 8 years. I don't expect either situation to change anytime soon. Well, here we are 15 years later. Geron's technologies, nuclear cell transfer, cloning, stem cells, etc., and telomeres were in that etc. part, are all leading edge. The bad news is that they are all years from FDA approval. The good news is they are coming along nicely, at least as I thought in 2007. The technologies are being validated by Geron and by the competition, and it seems that the competition is trailing Geron. Again, this is 15 years ago. The management continues to display competence in the technical and financial realms. I'm equally impressed with their handling of the political and public perceptions of their company and the technology. I will continue to hold. They're still a long way off, but are capable of breakthrough announcements that are impossible to time. So let's just kind of track all that back, and I'll start pulling together some of these pieces. Telomerase. See these little blue ends of the molecules here. Those are the telomeres. Telomeres are the things that kind of tell the cell. This is representative of the cell, I guess, of what is normal growth. When should the cell continue dividing, or when should it stop dividing? And as I understand it, that gets into uh, if it works well, doesn't work well is one of the things that triggers into cancer. So really, what they're working on is telomerase and whatnot that can hopefully manage those telomeres. Okay, so they're working on that, and they've got a pipeline that has that drug coming along. There's telomeres. But they've got a couple other ones that are in phase 3. This is encouraging. Phase 3 is right before, well, if everything goes well, it's prior to when a company will decide to go for FDA approval, and why wouldn't they? So they're much further along than they were in 2007, but they're not there yet. Again, maybe 2003, 2004. They don't have just those ones that are in phase 3. They have stuff all the way through. But if I go back and I describe what they used to have nuclear cell transfer, cloning, and stem cells as well. The company has survived all this time because they haven't had as much revenue because they haven't commercialized really anything that I'm aware of. But for instance, the stem cell research has been sold off to another company, which I now have stock in, which is called Lineage Cell Therapeutics. Cloning, they actually have had a substantial patent portfolio on how to clone mammals, not humans. They purposely steered clear of that. And I can't remember if nuclear cell transfer is similar to that or not. It's been so long. But at this point, they're down from those 4 major categories down to this one. And this one may be sufficient. One of the things that happens, that I hope happens, and this is my opinion, is that if they prove their technology in these phase 3 studies, and they're able to use that technology for specific disorders, like they have listed here, and sorry for not going through all this, but that can get overwhelming to just try and piece all those things together right now. If they have this stuff and it's working, I invest in biotechs that are advancing new technologies that if they work in one ailment, they might work in others as well. So there's a multiplying factor there potentially. If it works in blood disorders, does it work in other disorders as well? It's one of the reasons why biotech is so risky. It's also why it has that potential for being very lucrative. And also, good for society. If we find ways to cure cancers, I mean, that's something to celebrate. Folks who want to dive into how that doesn't always work out well can go back and look at Dendrian, which is something else I've had stock in, but we're going to leave that where it is. Now, I'm talking about the company, but I'm going to show you the stock price because it reflects how interest in Geron has been. And by the way, Geron is off of gerontology, which is the study of old age. And when I go back to when I originally bought the stock, this is the only stock I ever bought as a hot tip in 1999. So we can argue whether that was hot or not. But what the company was talking about at that point was working on cloning and stem cells and telomeres and things like that because they saw that as a way to advance aging issues so folks could live longer. Gerontology, the study of old age. And this is not just trying to cure one thing. This is trying to greatly expand human life. They've been working at it, and I hope that they're going to succeed because I'm now 23 years older than when I bought the stock. So recently, and this is ironic that I decided to decided to make this video last month, and then they announced earnings 2 days ago, and all of a sudden the stock just went up substantially, and it's up almost 100% for the last year. And if I take it back 5 years, you can see there was a period where folks got really excited, and then they didn't. And I've seen this happen frequently with innovative biotechs, where if they succeed, they can succeed rather rapidly. They're discounted by a lot of folks emotionally. Oh, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. But then when it starts to happen, all of a sudden there's a lot of interest. Well, and then there's not if the news doesn't fall through or doesn't pan out. So with that sort of thing in mind, here's this little bump from this week was out here on the far right of the graph. And by the way, Google Finance is where I'm getting all this stuff from. So thank you, Google Finance. But let's put it in perspective. Here's the data going back into the 1995 period. Yeah, 1996. I bought right about here, right before 2000. I was a happy camper. It went from 10 to not even to over 50 at least, and possibly over 60. But that was the internet bubble, and lots of weird things happened at that point. Since then, it's been up and down, but mostly down. And you can see why this is a long haul. There's optimists will say it's bound to turn around. Pessimists will say it's always been down. It'll stay down. Make your own decision. But the other thing to do is to not make it based on optimism versus pessimism, but based on business progress and probabilities and your interpretation of the situation. The irony I find is that let's see, what's the market cap right now? Market cap is 887 million. And when I bought the stock, well, in 2007, it was 370 million. So, 2007's in around here. Share counts vary and things like that. So, dilutions happened, selling off divisions has happened, and now they're down to that one stock, that one aspect. But if I go back here and point out, they're talking about having additional data in 2023, beginning of 2023. Again, the optimists will say it's January, the pessimists will say, well, that's June. But nonetheless, considering how long it's been on my portfolio, that's near term. Of course, as far as other folks are concerned, the FDA tends to go into more elaborate processes for approvals for innovative technologies. And being able to manage the telomeres probably qualifies as innovative. The other thing I point out, though, is these telomeres are throughout the body. I think it says so somewhere around here. Sorry if I don't just immediately. There we go. Telomerase is expressed in most cells. So this is being directed towards a specific application, iMerge and eMerge or iMerge and Impact MF. But it's also, I look at that, and without claiming any biotech expertise or anything like that, just as an independent investor, if telomeres and telomerase is repressed in most cells, then what else can it do in addition to treat blood disorders? And I don't know. But I know that to be able to treat some of these disorders would be a success in its own right. And then there's a multiplier effect if it can succeed at other things as well. So Geron's a fairly, well, I find it a fascinating company. It's a hard one to talk about because most folks don't want to talk biotech at the level of, molecular or at least DNA and chromosomal changes. In their early years, one of the things I said that I was impressed with was how managed perceptions. There was a lot of pushback against stem cell research at that time, and rather than just fighting it, they created a panel of experts that were dealing with the ethical questions. They saw dealing with the ethical issues as important as the technical ones. And I really appreciated the fact that they did that. So here we are. The stock is, after having been above 60, is now down at 2. It had a wonderful run up today, but who knows what's going to happen next week, and really, who knows what's going to happen as it comes into next year. I don't know, but I know that this kind of work that they're doing, And with that kind of progress, and with other ones behind them, they're almost like they've got a little bit of diversification within their own company. They're not just a one-trick pony. They're a very sophisticated series of tricks, and yet I think they can also expand. So that's my understanding of the company. It's had some very visionary management early on that was willing to take on something that was innovative enough that I imagine a lot of other folks would have a rough time getting funding. And they've managed to make it this far. But like I say, the company has had to sell off important things, and my enthusiasm declined every time they split something off. Of course, it turns out that I was able to buy into some of the other things that they split off, and I'll get into that next month because I'm doing these about once a month. And next month is going to be lineage cell therapeutics, which is also making progress on the stem cell side. So there you go. That's my understanding of Geron. I'm not going to get into, well, I don't get into the stock details as to overbought, oversold. Sorry, I'm just not that kind of a stock investor. If you can't tell, I'm long-term buy and hold. Hopefully, decades is a way to measure that. And I'm willing to buy in early and hold on because it's hard to time these things. Whether they succeed or not sounds like it's going to be, though, something coming up nearer than later. And I look forward to finding out how it works out. So that's my short, rambling discussion of Geron technology, stock I've held since 1999. And I hope it helps you understand the company. I'm not trying to describe the stock as much as I'm trying to help folks who just want to have a simpler explanation of the company. I wish them well because there's a lot of folks that could use these treatments. And if there's nothing else doing it, then we certainly want to make sure that they do. So with that, I will say goodbye and talk to you later.